So let's talk about Gen Z. They're the first generation to have grown up completely online, and it's so easy to think we've got them figured out from all the headlines and stereotypes. But today, we're going to push all of that aside. Let's really dig in and try to understand the world they're actually living in. And that brings us to the real question we're trying to answer here. Once you look past the curated feeds, the TikTok trends, all of that, who is this generation really? What are they truly worried about? What do they believe in? And what are their actual hopes for the future? This right here gets to the heart of the matter. It's this major contrast. On one hand, you see this super confident, digitally native persona they project to the world. But right underneath that surface, there's this incredibly complex inner life, full of anxieties that are, well, they're pretty unique to our time. Okay, so let's start there, with that world within. We're going to take a look at the anxieties that really define the Gen Z experience. From the huge societal pressures they're up against, all the way down to the fears they might not even tell their closest friends about. I mean, when you zoom out and look at the big picture, Gen Z is wrestling with some seriously heavy stuff. A lot of them share this deep fear of never, ever being financially stable. And it makes total sense, right? The cost of living is soaring, there's student debt, the job market is unpredictable. It all just casts this huge shadow. And that same shadow, it stretches over the entire planet. Yeah, this is the generation that is literally inheriting a planet in crisis. And that's given rise to this very real feeling, eco-anxiety. And we're not just talking about a casual concern here. For so many, it's this constant background hum of worry about the future of the Earth itself. And these anxieties, they don't just stay at the global level. They get incredibly personal. So beyond those big societal fears, there are things many in Gen Z just don't feel like they can share, especially with their parents. We're talking about struggles with mental health or figuring out their own identity. That fear of being judged or just plain misunderstood can create this really painful silence at home. And you know what? That silence can even happen between friends. Social media puts this relentless pressure on everyone to look perfect, to have it all put together. So even when you're constantly connected, it can feel absolutely impossible to admit you're lonely or struggling because you're scared of shattering that perfect image you've built. So with all this anxiety floating around, where does that lead? It would be so easy to just assume this generation is checked out, apathetic. But the truth is, it's the exact opposite. For Gen Z, being disillusioned with the way things are doesn't lead to apathy. It actually fuels this powerful drive to do something. And that is such an important difference to understand. What some people might see as apathy is actually a really deep sense of disillusionment. It's not that they don't care, it's that they have a very healthy skepticism of the traditional systems and institutions that they feel have totally failed to fix the world's biggest problems. There's this quote from our source material that just nails it. They often feel a burden to fix problems they inherited. You can just feel that mix of frustration and responsibility in that sentence. They feel the weight of these massive global issues, and it creates this incredible drive to demand change and hold people accountable. And trust me, this isn't just talk. You can see it in their actions. You see them on the front lines of movements for racial equality and LGBTQ+ rights. You see their absolute passion for protecting the environment and their loud demands for economic fairness. They're using every tool they have, online and off, to push for the kind of inclusive world they actually want to live in. Okay, you really can't talk about Gen Z without talking about technology. So in this next part, we're going to explore their really complex, kind of two-sided relationship with maybe the biggest technological shift happening right now, artificial intelligence. And when it comes to AI, it's like they're looking at two sides of the same coin. On the one hand, there's a ton of excitement. They see how it could solve huge problems, unlock new ways to be creative. But then there's the other hand, and it's full of genuine worry. They're the ones asking the really tough questions about jobs getting automated, about the biases baked into AI, and about what all this means for privacy and surveillance. Seriously, they are the first generation that has to truly grow up wrestling with the huge existential questions that AI brings up. Like, what does it mean to be human in a world that's becoming more automated? What happens to our connections with each other? Their whole perspective is this fascinating mix of wonder and a very necessary watchful eye. So we've gone through the anxieties, we've talked about their drive for action. Where does that leave us? For this final section, let's look at what Gen Z actually wants to build, their vision for a future that, right now, is still a blank page. And this might be the single most important thing to take away from all this.
Despite all the pressure, the eco-anxiety, the financial worries, this is not a generation that's given up. The source material is really clear on this. They are still remarkably hopeful and optimistic, even if it's an optimism with a dose of realism.
And their hopes are pretty inspiring. They're not just looking for a job that pays the bills. They want meaningful work, something that gives them a sense of purpose and lets them make a real impact. And their biggest hope? It's for the world itself. They want a future with real social equity, a world that is way more inclusive, sustainable, and fair for every single person. Which brings us to this last really powerful thought. Gen Z is out there actively trying to write a better future, but that future isn't just theirs to create. It kind of leaves a question for the rest of us, doesn't it? What part are we going to play in helping them build it?